Debbie and I are both, well, I guess we are creatures of the Reagan Revolution. And I was just thinking back that when Reagan was elected in 1980, I was 19, but you were 14. And ironically, you met Reagan at that age. Talk a little bit about, first of all, why did you, a Hispanic kid in a school in Harlingen, Texas, why did you care about meeting Reagan, and what was it like when you did meet Reagan?
Right. So, well, I mean, as a kid, I was always very political, even in Venezuela. I would like go with my cousin to put flyers on people's doors of our candidate in the Copey party, Copeyana. So I was a Copeyana before I was a Republicana.
Yes.
So anyway, so it was very natural for me at age 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 to be very political. And I have to say, my grandparents, I've talked about this before, were Democrats. They're from the Rio Grande Valley. They're Hispanic. They're Mexican American. And they were Democrats.
They were for Carter.
They were for Jimmy Carter. And I'll never forget, my grandmother had a plate, a Jimmy Carter Roslyn plate in the kitchen. And I would look at it and I would think to myself, why on earth is she voting for a Democrat? Just in my mind, right? Well, when it was announced that Reagan was coming to Harlingen, I really wanted to meet him, and I really wanted to do everything I could to make that happen. And so he went to Harlingen in the fall of 1980, probably September, I think, around then. I was a ninth grader. And so I was really excited and gung-ho to go see him. I got to see him. He was super sweet. But one of the things that I'll never forget that he said in that talk in Harlingen was that Hispanics are Republican. They just don't know it. Well, I knew it.
Well, let's unpack that phrase. Yes. Hispanics are, what he meant, I think, is that if you look at the way Hispanics are, not politically, but just their values, they're pro-family, they're hardworking, they know that education is the way up the ladder. In their beliefs and their conduct, they do belong in the Republican Party, even though historically they had been voting Democratic. Right. And your grandparents being the perfect example.
And my grandmother thought Jimmy Carter was a farmer, that he was probably not of wealth, and so she thought, he's like us. He is like us, right?
Not to mention he's an evangelical Christian.
Exactly. And my grandmother was an evangelical Christian, and so all of these things were very important to her. So anyway, but Reagan, and I came to find this out later, Reagan's goal, and this is why we always talk about Latinos and Trump, and the fact that he made such headway with inroads with the Latino community in the Rio Grande Valley. But Reagan always wanted the Republicans to have a really large Hispanic support. And in 1980, he got 30% of the Hispanic vote. And in 84, he got 37% of the Hispanic vote. I was one of those because I did get to vote for him his second term, right? But nobody came close to him until Donald Trump. And so George W. Bush, I believe he got 30 and 35. I think Senior got 30% of the vote. But, this is crazy because we should be Hispanics should be overwhelmingly voting for Republicans because of the Hispanic platform, just in general, our values, our beliefs really line up with the Republican Party and not the Democratic Party. So we are doing a very poor job as Republicans to bring more Hispanics into the fold.
Since Reagan, we haven't, I think it's fair to say, had someone quite like him. We have had a number of people, starting, of course, when we had Bush, H.W., then Clinton, and on the Republican side, we had W., and of course, we've had Trump. What is it about Reagan that to you makes him stand out? Is it simply the fact that we were younger then and sort of Reagan was our guiding star? Or is it that even looking back and with some kind of clinical objectivity, there was something different about Reagan? What was that?
Reagan was like my grandpa. He felt like somebody that I could go up to and talk to and give him, all kinds of, stories, and so he was that type of person. He was very nice, very cordial, very warm, and he was not like your typical politician. And I got the same type of feeling when I met Donald Trump. The exact same.
Yeah, although on the face of it,
different.
Yeah,
they're
temperamentally different. Their styles are different.
Yes.
I mean, I think part of the reason for that, and people mistake the fact they say Trump is so aggressive. It's a different time.
Right.
In fact, I see this even with Lincoln, or the early Lincoln is different than the later Lincoln, because Lincoln realized he was in a very difficult situation. In fact, he said, I'm facing a challenge greater than Washington faced.
Yep.
And he realized, I've got to be a man of steel.
Yeah.
Whereas before, Lincoln had been perceived as kind of a softie, a little bit of a rhino.
Right. Well, with Reagan, I often tell you how every time something would happen and he would go on TV, I would literally start sobbing. I don't know of any other politician that's ever done that to me before, but like the Challenger or since the Challenger disaster, which you're going to talk a little bit about later. I mean, that was like phenomenal. His speech was great. Even his farewell address made me cry, because I knew that we may never have anybody like him ever again, and he was just that type of person, president, leader. And
now, one of the things is that when Reagan used the phrase "we," which he would, he did speak about one America. I think he saw America as a single country. I think he saw Democrats as, well, remember, he had been a Democrat, as not enemies, but just political opponents, people who saw things a different way. And I wonder if we will ever get back that sense of a one America where we disagree about means, but we do agree generally on goals.
Well, I hope we do reach that point in America. I'm afraid to say we probably won't. I think the Ronald Reagan era of politics is over.
When you think back to the highlights of Reagan, his kind of great moments, his sort of greatest hits, what is the one time at which you remember Reagan as sort of exhibiting the qualities that are quintessential in a leader?
Well, I mean, especially with his ability to convince somebody like Gorbachev to end the Cold War. I mean, that to me was just amazing that he was able to do that. And Gorbachev was even regarded him as a friend, which I can't even imagine that happening today.
Well, I remember going back, I think, to the 1987 summit, where Reagan would tell Gorbachev just highly amusing anecdotes, which had nothing to do with politics. At one point, Reagan was telling Gorbachev about this really fat man who had gotten stuck in his own bathroom and couldn't get out of it. And Gorbachev was intrigued, because obviously this was not diplomatic talk, this was not scripted. Right. Gorbachev was like, where did you find out about this man? How did the man eventually make his way out of the bathroom? So here's Reagan, these world leaders. But I think Reagan realized that that's the way you actually break the ice.
Right.
Get in through to people, and they begin to talk to you more on a personal level.
Yeah.
I mean, Gorbachev at one point asked Reagan for advice. When Eastern Europe was breaking apart, the Soviet Union was beginning to dissolve, and Gorbachev said to Reagan something to the effect of, I feel like a man on a precipice, what should I do? And Reagan unbelievably said to Gorbachev, take one step forward.
I'm sorry. I always get choked up.
But I mean, here's a man telling another man to commit sort of political suicide, and amazingly, he did it. Gorbachev did it.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.